So I would like to welcome everybody here. Thank you for the patience with the brief delay, but I'm here to introduce Agustin Peleaz. And so Agustin is scaling a global IoT startup, enjoying the simple life in Medellin and in the US, and is the CEO and co-founder of Ubidots. And so Agustin, the floor is yours, and thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you, Danny, for having us, and thank you all for being here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I'm gonna, sorry, that should put. Yeah, so
Perfect. Looks good. We're ready to
I'm
go.
glad it works. So thank you all for being here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ubidots. For those of you who might not be familiar with us, we work at the application layer of IoT. As we all know, especially at the product development conference, IoT has a lot of different layers. I'm based on the conversation that I've had with some of you during the networking. I've seen there's a heavy hardware expertise, which I'm looking forward to learn more and continue to listen to other presentations. But we are more focused in the software layer. So the way I like to see it is, you got consumer IoT, industrial IoT slash commercial IoT, and this is where we stand. So if you have any questions, suggestions, comments around any of these topics, happy to provide my 2 cents either later or during the virtual networking. As for the rest, I reckon that there's this amazing world around consumer IoT and the millions of devices. But in our case, we're more focused on these other layers. So with that, let's share a bit more about what we're doing. First off, so we're on a mission to enable the data-driven future. I would like to say it, and we mean enable and not exactly building, because we provide the building blocks to IoT entrepreneurs and to system integrators out there building entire IoT solutions. So we have a freemium model where we have a free tier for educational projects, non-commercial projects that has been used by over 100,000 engineers, uh, from students to makers and researchers. And that has led us to gain some mind share within the IoT platform space that has brought over 400 organic clients to our website, and then converting, of course, to a recurring customer that is building IoT projects. And then, of course, the beauty of the internet is we can do all of this from Latin America or from virtually anywhere in the world to any customer out there. So right now, and especially more after the pandemic, so we have a remote distributed team across the Americas with clients that span globally, which is why we picked the title of the talk, the Global IoT Entrepreneurship. So in a nutshell, we put like backend and front end components together so that our clients can launch beautiful dashboards and take all the credit for it. So we give them from backend, storage, databases, functions like serverless functions to decode data or to make analysis of the data, to dashboards, alerts, etc. So a bit of the scope that we're covering. So as I said, we have this freemium tier, which sometimes is very nice to come across videos like this. Someone creating a kid, creating a project for a science fair at school to detect wildfires, all the way through IoT entrepreneurs creating actual IoT businesses built on top of our platform, system integrators working for Industry 4.0 projects, and then, of course, the enterprise all the way up until large telcos that are entering the IoT space and use a platform to gain speed and go faster to market. So As I said, the one big part of what we uh, of our message, if you will, is the fact that you can create a global business from the comfort of your home. And that's basically what our customers are doing. So they are discovering problems within the industries that surround their cities, be it agriculture, be it manufacturing, etc. And they use novel tools and hardware and software to create a value offer that solves these problems, being able to create entire businesses. And we are a proof that this is possible. So I'm personally not exactly born in an ecosystem with a high tech tradition, but building Ubidots from Medellin, Colombia, and now most recently across the entire Latin America has allowed us to prove that it is possible to build global businesses with the right tools and the right motivation. So today, as Danny was mentioning in the main intro, it's about sharing a lot of things that we don't hear about. Whenever we see news about a certain company, these stories are often told about what happened after these companies found the product market fit. So today, I want to show this journey from the training that we got as first time entrepreneurs through some mistakes that happened in the middle. I would call this phase the pre-product market fit phase, and then how that translated into the growth that we have had by having experienced the product market fit. We'll see what that is in a minute. So very fast, and we'll go one by one later as we go through the lessons learned. It all started at the Boston Mass Challenge Accelerator, where we applied virtually with a PowerPoint, and they somehow believed or they saw evidence that we could execute on a vision. Back then, IoT was kind of novel still, and I think it is. So going through Mass Challenge helped us a lot in learning what it was like to go from a services company to a product-based company. Then we launched a first attempt of product. We got a lot of users, but I think IoT was still very in the prototyping phase, and we were not able to monetize this product correctly. So then we had a seed round, and after then we have been able to become a cash flow positive company and then reinvest everything into the product, growing, of course, to what you saw earlier, which is not your typical unicorn SaaS company, but it is definitely a startup that has been scaling year after year. And I think for all of us, whatever growth we have today is going to look like a flat line compared to everything we can achieve because IoT, I think, is just getting started. So let's go one by one through these lessons and see what we learned. So the first thing that was kind of new to me was that there's this whole body of knowledge around products. So for me, every company looked the same. It was selling something, a product or service. When you zoom in into tech, you will realize that there are like a services branch of businesses, and then there are companies that focus solely on product. So it looks something like this. So there's even like a term for it. It's called product-led growth, and it means it's a go-to-market strategy that relies only on the product, or mostly on the product, as the main driver of acquisition, conversion, and expansion. So it doesn't mean that there's no sales team. Of course, there is sales, there's marketing, but even all of these teams they come together through like a prisma, like the image shows, that yields at the end only one thing that matters, which is the user experience. Um, and to exemplify how important this has become nowadays, if you look at a non-tech company, like let's say an insurance company, you could say that maybe you purchased an insurance for your car, and you've never used this insurance because you've never crashed your car, and therefore, you could argue that you haven't used the product. The reality is that you use that product every month when you go to pay for your insurance. You use that product when you experience the process of the purchasing, when you raised when you became aware that this product existed, and you compare different type of insurances. So even in the case where you don't get to experience the full functionality of a product, you're still using or having a relationship with the brand that is 360. So for us, we're going to see some examples of where that failed and how we fixed it. And to put even more importance to this, this is an old metric. Pre-pandemic, 75% of B2B buyers say that they would rather buy through an app or website than through a salesperson. And this has only become even more because, after the lockdown, the potential buyers are higher, are more difficult to get a grip on, or to get a phone call, or even an in-person meeting. So it has become more important. If there are some of you who are developer focused or companies, then recent surveys have shown that even that this is even more important for you to become a product led. So this graph basically shows that if you could get all the software as a service companies, or that a recent survey had, which is more than 250, 67% of them had a free version or a free trial, which only says that developers like to try things before they buy, and you shouldn't underestimate the development power of even an executive when it comes to a purchase decision. So the second thing, and most of these will be framed across this product-led approach, was reducing the time to wow. So back then, and even now, we had a product that was kind of hard to communicate. Like if you think about the friction that involves having a hardware device, having to code it, upload the firmware, send data through a TCP, UDP, or HTTP protocol, and then finally getting to experience the final product was a very long journey. So I remember when we were in Boston, we joined this meetup group and asked for the chance to present what we had been working on so hard for the past 6 months. So we made this demo where you could scan a QR code in your laptop, and then from your phone, they didn't have to be on the same network. You kind of controlled the valve of a tank, and then you were able to fill it or empty the tank. And then you could get an SMS if it was above a threshold. So it was a very cool way to kind of getting to experience what IoT was about. We're speaking 2013, 2014. Real time wasn't as permeated as it is today in everyone's lives. So seeing this real time interaction was like a pretty interesting things for most users. So back to the learnings, it was well implemented from the standpoint that we were creating this aha moment, which is this emotional connection that is created when you have this first experience that is powerful enough to keep users coming back. But we failed at measuring activation. So what this product-led approach says is that if you see companies that have the traditional sales channels, they might not even define the activation metric. um, Only 25% of them do, whereas the companies that are following the product-led approach are the vast majority of them are measuring the metric. So what this means is it comes to a point where they can ping the sales team to say, hey, out of these 1,000 users, only this percentage with these names and emails actually got to do the activation or that aha moment So then you want to do two things: either compare to the benchmarks to see if you need to increase that conversion rate or that activation rate, or simply if it's good enough or if it's within the benchmarks, then you want to pass that list to a sales team so that it can be more proactive at closing. So I wish we had done this earlier. We're doing it now, but I wish we had done this earlier. Um, the third part, continuing with the story. So after the meetup, meetups can have hundreds of attendees potentially, and then probably only 50% show up. So I took the time, as because we were looking for beta testers, to write one by one, and yeah, basically see if they were able to test what we were building. And I got a very harsh email. Of course, I hide. I had to hide the name. Although if I met this person today, I would probably thank him, because it's like very honest opinion about not being able to figuring out the value add, um, sort of saying that this is nothing new. This is capturing data from a web server is nothing new. This is not rocket science. Unless I missed something real beyond the marketing fluff, then you know I'm not willing to test your product. So here it was an example of a bad UX, and by UX is not a design thing. It's not even the user interface, aesthetically speaking, but the fact that there was not an actual documentation for him to or for her to test the waters before actually giving personal information such as the email. So I remember this day, my co-founder and I, we went back to the Airbnb and just coded an entire documentation portal, because it is what we had been working on the functional side of the product, which is what you see in the top circle here, and we focused too much on the function and the aesthetics, but there's so much more to it. There's the communication, what we want to convey with the given pricing, if it's free, if it's free trial, or if it's enterprise grade and we don't want to give away the pricing. So it would be more like of a call us button. Even products have meaning. It's not the same if you buy a coffee that was where the crops are 3,000 feet in a nice mountain, uh, by the local communities, or if you buy an industrial one. So consumers are willing to pay a premium for things that have a meaning that they also want to give to their lives. So just being more conscious about this 360 view of product design has led to more adoption and of course more customers. So specifically speaking about the documentation, I want to quote a recent podcast that I listened to, Francesca Chirelli. She was the former developer marketing associate for MongoDB, and she gives a lot of examples where the lack of technical documentation sometimes can be even insulting to an executive that could perfectly understand technical documentation, but is having to wait for a sales call in order to learn how a product works. So even if your product is enterprise oriented or developer, if you're focusing on a developer growth strategy, I think it makes sense nowadays to just be open about developer documentation, because that's what people are looking for. And to put like an additional evidence of how details or how design is more than aesthetics, this is an actual view of our UI today. And I spotted two errors here. I mean, it's not error; it's just like minor tweaks that we could do, and I reckon this is still public. First, when you add a device, you need to highlight the place where you enter the name. Then you need to go down with the mouse and then with the pointer and click on that green button. So it's just two clicks more. So you would say, okay, maybe it's not a big deal, but it turns out that details do matter. If I go to Mixpanel, which is where we measure all the product events, I see that in just 1 month, there's almost 200,000 events that happen around a specific UI. So reckoning that maybe a 1% improvement or a 2% improvement across any UI can yield dramatic growth or gradual growth that could at the end translate into more sales or more devices created or more user engagement. uh, so then we went on to launch the product. As I said, we had applied to mass challenge, and I feel like there was this misconception between product market fit and market validation. So, and I see it very often in a lot of entrepreneurs that maybe they make a pitch or are in a phase where they experience some traction. So when is that moment where you, first of all, what is market validation or what is market fit, and how can you jump from one to another? So the first, I went back in time to pull this original slide that we used to apply to Mass Challenge back into 2013, and I saw a couple of things that, of course, were true. So we had two customers. They were taking us to over 1,000 users and over 40 end companies. These were hospitals back then. It was a healthcare IoT application. Um, so it's not a bad pitch for a company that's just starting, and especially in IoT back then, because it showed traction, definitely. And in the context of an accelerator, of course, it's okay. We were calling this an alpha product. But in the wrong context, it can be something misleading. I even remember reading a news about some of these hospitals being ranked among the top of Latin America, which allowed me to say, hey, our product is being used by some of the top hospitals in Latin America. And I think that made a great point for the pitch. But there's a danger in founders to confuse that with market fit. So if you have a product and if you have it in the right hands, it's being used, it's okay. But by definition, a market validation is when the market is big enough, you have a product that is sort of satisfying that need of the market, and you have a few initial customers that cannot be attributed to the product or the business model, but rather to the founder's network or the founder's sales skill. And again, nothing wrong with that. That's how we all begin. We need to put these products on the hands of someone in order to get feedback, but there's a danger in confusing that with, what, we have product market fit and we need to push marketing because we know it works. So by definition, the product market fit happens when the market is big enough, the product can satisfy it, and you have a business model that has been validated. So it looks something like this. Now, how to jump or how to differentiate from one to the other? First of all, I would have listened more. I feel like a lot of the features that today some enterprise clients reckon as being the reasons why they upgraded to a higher tier or why they chose Ubidots and not building an entire solution in-house. Some of them are exactly the features that were asked for by our initial larger clients. Some of, I think one of them is actually in the audience, so I need to say that. Uh, and then how do you recognize? So first, listen more. I would have listened more because just that's like a good anecdote. But there are other features that had been asked by these customers, way back, and maybe we were not as fast to implement it. Um, and then there are some tools. There's something called the product market fit survey, which I recommend if you feel you are in the stage where you have market fit. Then there's a tool to measure it. You can send out this survey. It's basically a very simple questionnaire. It has three questions. If I don't remember correctly, it's like whether you can live without the product. So they will answer likely, not likely, or what would happen if you didn't have a product. You want more than 40% of the user base to respond that they cannot live without a product. And then there are some other series of questions that ask them to describe the ideal buyer persona of this product, and then you can use those descriptions to get some marketing messages, keywords that you can use for marketing copy. So there are tools to measure it, but at the end, it's something that you see. If you see growth, it doesn't have to be 2 digits per month. I know some playbooks will make you feel bad if you're not having 2 digits per month or even per week, but the the, the world is full of camels and horses, not only unicorns. And every business, as long as it creates value, it's a business. So this is one of the indicators that we saw there was market fit, is the percentage of revenue that was coming from services. Of course, was almost 100% at the beginning. It surged 2014 and 2015 to be able to funnel money to the product. Then finally, 2017, we raised this small seed round, which allowed us to focus entirely on the product and then experiment this growth. And lastly, so let's talk a little bit. I wanted to talk one last slide about culture, because if you're a product company, uh, product is your culture is your product, and your product is your culture. Like there's no way to decouple those. I think now more than ever, anyone could build anything with the right tools, and that's great news. But it also means that anyone could replicate what you have. It's just a matter of time and capital, and talent, of course. So in at the end, really, what gives that unique personality to a product is your company culture. So we like to celebrate every small victory. Um, we have this very rooted in the company culture. As I said, we do talent shows, we celebrate Women's Day, we celebrate opening the new office, especially now after the lockdown, um, because similar to the product being able to be built by anyone, same happens to company perks and to the culture. All of those companies that are competing for the same talent, they also have access to all the tools that we have access to, the same perks, the same healthcare insurance, etc. So at the end, what gives that unique personality are those spaces where the founders get to express their goals, their fears, their reasons, and I think that's what creates that unique DNA, unique personality within the people that lastly translates into the product or how the company relates to its clients. And one last extra thing. So we like to inquire more about the things we don't know. So I feel like at the beginning or in the middle of our story, as you saw, a story has not been a straight line, and we're open about that. I think it's the real struggle for most entrepreneurs, not the things you hear in the news. And I feel like right there in the middle, in that phase where we were not finding market fit, we were in this vicious circle of looking for confirmation of our own hypothesis. So yes, we had proven a hypothesis that enabled the business, which is, could we separate hardware from software? Could we SaaSify IoT? Could we have our clients to build the hardware, and then we provide an API for them to stream data to the platform? And that it sounds obvious now, but there was not like a market category back then. So it was a great thing to demonstrate that this was true. But I feel like we stayed there and we were talking to the same users we had, the same users that were saying that they love the product. So always looking to confirm that maybe the business model was the one we had to pursue. And then we forgot about the graveyard of things where all the entire possible body of knowledge is. Um, and this, for a founder, means talking to the clients that did not convert, talking to the clients that left, do not promoting among your employees a sense of um, confirming what the boss says, but in opposite to that is asking them to challenge your visions, to challenge your beliefs. And I think that mindset is what ultimately can help a company thrive and a founding team to find the product market fit. So, in a nutshell, we back then we had to train ourselves. First time founders, we didn't know anything. Now, then we didn't know what we didn't know. We were not focused on that, and now I try to think that we like to inquire more about the things we don't know. We don't know, and that has ultimately permeated into the culture and hopefully help us achieve a next milestone. So what that milestone is, we are not looking to become the largest IoT company in the world, but certainly provide the best IoT development experience in the world. So we're growing every month. We are activating new clients. As I said, we are remote and completely across Latin America. And well, if you have any thoughts on this and would like my 2 cents on any of what we talked about, then happy to chat later in the virtual networking. So thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you so much, Augustine. I really appreciate it. And again, everyone, if anyone would like to chat with Augustine, you can find him at his booth, which is the Ubidots booth, right down on the exhibition edge on the left. And thank you very much. We'll see everybody else at the next talk at, I believe it is 10 o'clock. Thank you. Have a good one.
Check it out.